poster hanging just outside the Stockdale Center in Luce Hall. It bears a message: we are at war.
It's a provocative question. My job is to make sure my students are ready for that.
Sometimes I do wonder if we're at a war with China in some form or fashion.
What we talk about on a regular basis here, which is obviously preparing to commission you into an era of conflict.
When I walk by that poster, I think it's definitely a challenge. Am I really preparing myself in every way that I can for the career that I'm about to embark on? I think that poster's still a good challenge, but yeah, I think I feel like that. I just don't want to be caught unprepared.
You better operate with a sense of urgency because you may not get the time you think you have to prepare.
In this episode, Admiral Keith David's admonition becomes a central question. We must prepare, but prepare for what? Prepare how? Sometimes the answers we seek aren't beyond our gaze or buried in complexity. Sometimes they're in plain sight. In this case, out that window, in the quiet geometry of a cluster of classrooms and labs. Buildings at the Naval Academy are named as a testimonial to honor those who have led the sea services through uncertainty and crisis. They built the future through innovation. On the left is Nimitz Library, named to honor Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz, who in the crucible of the Pacific War envisioned and then orchestrated the U.S. Navy's shift from battleships to carriers, redefining the very nature of sea power.
I pray that no future war may ever again find us unprepared.
In the middle is Hopper Hall, named in honor of Admiral Grace Hopper, the computer pioneer who reimagined how machines could think, and in doing so, changed the very language of software.
I think the saddest phrase I ever hear in a computer installation is that horrible one, but we've always done it that way.
And on the right, that building we saw out the window is Rickover Hall, named for Admiral Hyman Rickover, who built the nuclear navy not with slogans, but with standards, impossibly high ones, and was always focused on solving the hardest problems.
You're looking for easy solutions. The trouble with you is you want easy answers, but you don't know the proper questions.
Joel Esposito is among a new generation at the Naval Academy, asking the hard questions.
If you're trying to be killed quick,
for sure,
it's not always the quickest route.
A professor of weapons, robotics, and control engineering, he's also a director of research for innovation, trying to follow in the footsteps of titans.
It's always a race. You might sometimes think you're not in a race. I often say you can choose to lose, but you can't choose not to play.
There's like a vector. That's the acceleration.
You're always in a race, right? And whether that be just in scientific publishing, right? Or whether it be in just commercial technology, right? Bringing a technology to market, or in a great power competition. You can choose to ignore it, but it is a race.
The current race is a race to weaponize and field these emerging technologies.
If you are killed by a drone, you're out. And we'll tell you, you just got killed by a drone.
You know, there's been a lot of conversation over many years about revolutions in military technology. And what we find out is they're oftentimes not really revolutions. They're more like evolutions. We're at a break point where revolution in military technology might apply.
China is unveiling the future of military technology at Airshow China 2024, introducing a new generation of light arms and an innovative creation, robotic wolves.
Today's breakthrough in unmanned warfare is making headlines worldwide. The focus is on China's latest development, CH-9.
China's new CH-9 isn't just another UV, it's a flying AI-powered strike platform that can stay airborne for 40 hours and make critical decisions faster than most humans.
There's new concern tonight about China's military capabilities amid a report the country recently tested a nuclear-capable hypersonic missile.
I think the most interesting question in this moment is how we approach the revolutionary changes represented in some of this newly emerging technology. It's so interesting because the pace of change is rapidly accelerating that it's very difficult to see where this is going.
The transformation which is happening in the world now will accelerate.
That's what makes this moment in time different.
We're very concerned about the development of gene editing biological weapons, the ability to manipulate genetic code and use that to produce biological agents that could be resistant to antibiotics is something that really worries not just people in the biological world, but in the strategic world.
China is reportedly looking for a way to teach soldiers to operate weapons with just their minds.
It would be literally like putting a device into your brain that can launch a missile.
Whoever is the first to realize the potential of quantum computers will wield incredible power.
集聚力量，进行原创性、引领性科技攻关，坚决打赢关键核心技术攻坚战。
Quantum computing. The science is deep, but we hope to explain enough so that you won't be blindsided by a breakthrough that could transform civilization.
I mean, the whole idea is like, if it works, right, you'll be able to break encryption, break strong encryption. And the premise is that like modern encryption is essentially unbreakable. But what's really dangerous is when you think something's unbreakable and then it's been broken. And that's what happened with Enigma in World War II.
In 1940, Britain stood alone against Hitler. Defeat seemed inevitable. But Churchill had a secret weapon to smash the mighty German code machine, the Enigma, the machine that carried all the secret German war plans.
Let me show you how it works.
If we broke the code and then announced to the world that we broke it, that wouldn't have given us an advantage, right? But because the Germans continued operating as if, of course, this is secret. No one would know what our next plans are, but we knew. So if quantum computing really does come about, right, but not in a way that it's announced to everybody, right? If another state actor has the ability to crack encryption and we don't know it, right, that's just super dangerous. I mean, beyond strategic importance.
We're at the dawn of a new age of warfare. As we saw in World War II with the atomic bomb, the country that is able to most rapidly and effectively integrate new technology into warfighting wins. There's no reason to believe this will be any different with AI. In an AI war, everything boils down to data.
There's a saying in data science, which is that data is the new oil. So you think about oil as this massive resource, but before somebody invented the internal combustion engine, was that even very useful? We didn't even know what we were sitting on. And now there's an insatiable appetite for oil. So is this thing constantly running and spitting out data? And it's the same with data. There was a time when we could have all the data in the world and we didn't know what to do with it. But now data is what drives innovation in AI.
We may look on our time as the moment civilization was transformed.
Yes, I think we're in a transformative era, and I think we're going to see transformations of a lot of our institutions, a lot of our ways of doing business. The skill that we need to cultivate is innovation.
There are many ways to define innovation. It's usually something about creating new products and services, processes, and so on. But what I like to think about innovation, it goes to its actual core. What enables innovation in people? I think it's a combination of two things: critical thinking and creative thinking. And both of those things essentially are two sides of the same coin.
Here we are in the SpaceX machine shop.
That is to say, critical thinking on one hand is solving problems in the presence of experience and procedures and known steps for problem solving.
Everything's already been done, and your job is to find the new way to do it.
Creative thinking, on the other hand, is solving problems in the absence of those to really be innovative.
I do feel like innovation is the key. The priorities that I've set for the faculty and the curriculum have been to increase the geopolitical competency of our students.
At the State Department,
their turn against the Chinese government.
Given the importance of global alliances and understanding the world, and also to facilitate innovation for midshipmen and faculty in ways that benefit the Navy and Marine Corps. So an example of that is our Capstone program. And I see these things actually as tied.
Papua New Guinea. In July of 2023, myself and 6 other midshipmen traveled to this beautiful country as part of a language, regional expertise, and culture program through the U.S. Naval Academy.
Yeah, there's 2 experiences that the Naval Academy provides to midshipmen I think are really important in the development of this mental agility, which leads to innovation. First is LREX, which is an acronym for Language, Regional Expertise, and Culture, LREC, immersions. On the side of Capstones, it's a complementary experience that structures the learning in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics environment.
It's only like 3% shy.
That again, stress them, challenge them in ways that force critical and creative thinking, and therefore innovation.
We went to Nepal, and to go from Annapolis, Maryland to Kathmandu, in just blink of an eye, you're there. It's pretty crazy.
How's it going? How you feeling post-flight?
Before we went on the trip, Dr. Thomas emphasized the importance of, trying to research the culture there. He challenged us. He said, go on AI like ChatGPT and find out what you can about the culture there, and we'll see how it compares. So we did that, and to put it simply, it was extremely, extremely wrong. So I think the moment I started, understanding it the best is when we were in those remote environments. Specifically, we went to an orphanage. They have nothing. And I realized how much they just appreciated being alive. From the orphanage to the refugee camp, extremely different. These refugees they haven't been completely accepted into the Nepali society since they were, kind of kicked out of Tibet when China came through.
A big man, rich man, good man.
My preference is to take midshipmen to remote cultures in austere environments. And the reason for that is by immersing them in a culture that is utterly unlike our own, the learning curve becomes extremely steep. So every step along the way, you can't help but learn because you have to be innovative to navigate your day-to-day life.
Keep walking through it. You need help?
This is a really uncomfortable position to hold.
This is the view at 8,000.
26 degrees out.
Yep. About to go 4,000 up today in the span of 3 hours.
We get 23,000 feet by the end of the day.
The leeches were horrible.
Very leaky.
Whenever we went on our hikes through the hills, it seemed nonstop. We were covered in dozens of leeches.
Wow.
When you get them off, you're still bleeding. You'd get back for the day and your leg would just be dripping with blood. So yeah, it was miserable. Driving up the mountain with no guardrails was an experience you don't really get here. You're going on these bumpy roads in the monsoon season, so it's not just dirt, it's mud. But we couldn't even gain the traction to get up that, and we ended up having to push the car, and it took us a couple hours with the help of a bunch of locals. We ended up having to push the car physically up the hill.
Didn't make it.
A day after, when we got stuck, we saw on the news.
A devastating accident in Nepal has left 27 Indian tourists dead after their bus plunged 150 meters into the river.
I would say the ability to get to know and understand these very different cultures quickly, to overcome that steep learning curve quickly, is a super valuable trait I learned. And you know, with the competition with China, the ability to understand them and their culture. If you can't do that, you don't know your enemy. If you don't know your enemy, how are you going to defeat it?
How you doing?
So I think we look for answers too often. And I think maybe the reason for that is, I think it's easy to get answers in today's world. Like I said, we went on ChatGPT and asked it all about the Nepali culture. And it gave us good answers, pretty answers. You know, 1, 2, 3 bullet points. But it certainly did not encapsulate the real culture. And I think even in the experience we had, we went in with questions, we answered some, but I think we came out certainly with more questions.
It's a prayer wheel?
Yes.
To succeed in future challenges, we need to cultivate curiosity and adaptability, which will drive innovation. LREC immersions enhance geopolitical competence, while the Academy's Capstone experience equips midshipmen with the technical competence necessary for success in future conflicts.
That might be helpful to figure it out.
These two complementary approaches are the holistic development needed most to prepare for great power competition.
I like the robotics master's program for our students because I feel like you're really going to get to focus on the kinds of things you want to do.
My colleague, Joel Esposito, I've appointed him a Deputy Director for Innovation for Research to look at ways we can better structure our enterprise here to facilitate that goal. But he put together this graphic.
How do we connect all the research and scholarship that our faculty members do to the curriculum at a place like the Naval Academy? And one of the ways that happens is that faculty go out and they get problems and funding from different places, like, for example, the Office of Naval Research, which connects them with the important needs of the Navy. Then when they come back to their labs to work on those problems, they want to bring midshipmen into the laboratory to work with them. But how do we prepare the midshipmen to do that? And the one way we prepare those midshipmen is that they may take an upper-level elective that specializes in that area. But then we have to think, how will they be prepared to take that upper-level elective? Well, then we have to sit down and make sure that the things we were talking about in plebe year, in sophomore year, youngster year, kind of build them up and prepare them to tackle those topics later on. So you can kind of think of it as this continuous feedback loop, right? Where these kind of resources and problems come in from the fleet, they go up to the faculty, and as they trickle down to make them accessible to the midshipmen, they're informing and strengthening our curriculum so that the mids are prepared to tackle those kind of problems.
You know, there are risks that the services are managing in terms of manpower, equipment. You know, I think these are very long-term risks, right, or medium and long-term.
So what innovation's about is connecting the faculty to those resources, whether that be the ideas, the equipment, the funding from our warfighting and national security partners.
We're funneling, you know, whether it's faculty research or ideas from the Department of Defense, you know, into the research that you're doing, and hopefully will we produce some honors thesis, capstone projects to participate in these type of DoD research priorities, especially the one we're deep in around risk management.
The faculty are working in their laboratories, and they need to mentor those midshipmen side by side, and that's where that spillover, that's where those, not just the resources, you know, financially, but also the ideas, the problems from the fleet, the connections to warfighting.
So Ross, do you have any other questions?
We have to prepare those students to work in those roles, to be mentored at the high level.
So I'm just making sure I'm following you.
So I see what we do here, particularly in our Capstone program, as the key to creating a process that allows our curriculum to keep track of what fleet needs and to innovate.
So this is a big part. You can see this little circle that says CG on it. That's the center of gravity in a plane. And so pretty much the whole design predicates on the fact that this CG is in the proper location. So my capstone project, we've been contracted by an organization in Alaska that builds roads in the Arctic. Well, the issue is Whenever they come across polar bears in their dens, they have to either redirect the roads that they're building or move the polar bears, both of which are very costly. So what they want is kind of a forward deployed or forward looking drone to go survey the area. But the issue is, per environmental guidelines, you can't make a lot of noise around the polar bears or else it disrupts them. There's a certain level that the polar bears can withstand before they want to relocate. So we have to keep the decibel levels under a certain number. And the way we're going to do that is by pretty much putting a block around the propeller that limits its noise signature by dispersing the noise and refracting it in different directions. We're looking at technologies that have never been used in an operational setting. For example, like I said, we're trying to mitigate noise. So we're looking at a whole different type of propeller technology that was theorized last year by MIT, but has never been tested on a model of this size. I think it's pretty cool, and I think it's caused us to critically think and come up with a solution to a problem. From a mission standpoint, that's super applicable to the fleet, because for smaller drones, that don't necessarily have stealth, you could hear the drone. You might not be able to see it, but you could hear it. So being able to mitigate and limit that noise is super mission critical, I think, for small scale drones out in the fleet, which are becoming more and more apparent as we've seen in Russia-Ukraine war. There's been a lot of people who have come out of the Russia-Ukraine incident that have said like that sound gives them PTSD in similar ways that like mortar shells were giving people in World War I in the trenches PTSD. So yeah, I think it's just a consequence of the new modern warfare. If someone thinks the Capstone is simply a science project, I think that would be doing the Capstone an injustice because it's so much deeper than that. And like I said, the amount of variables that you're managing throughout the whole process and relating them to each other is extremely rigorous. And then I think the lessons that you learn from a process like that are invaluable, given that things don't always go to plan, and the ability to use your agility and change the plan to best accomplish the mission is definitely the biggest lesson we've learned so far.
You guys probably already know this, but you know what's killing more tanks than anything in Ukraine? Yeah, it's not artillery. It's not tanks. It's drones. It's also, if you talk to our Ukrainian partners and the Russians, frankly, it's not only combat effective, it's psychologically hugely effective. It's demoralizing people. To gain wisdom, you need experience, and so there's some things the mids will never get until they get to the fleet. On the other hand,
you were able to distract a drone.
The mids are learning how to think, and the more exposure they can get to understanding fleet problems now.
The drones aren't all focused on us. Yeah. So it gives us a lot more freedom to start maneuvering around.
The mids have something that their teammates in the fleet don't have, which is time to think.
So it was good that you were thinking on your feet and kind of tackling this in a different way.
This is a great opportunity for midshipmen. And I think the provost and others are doing a magnificent job here of helping them understand fleet problems and giving them the opportunity to think about that now.
Nice job. Really, really well done.
Thank you.
But I think the mids can be thought leaders as they step into the fleet. Now they're going to need context, but these young minds come up with creative things that old guys like me just won't. You're going to start as a newly commissioned officer miles ahead of where I was. Here's what I offer, or the folks who are still serving, is I may not have the creative new idea, but I will see the value in a creative new idea that the midshipman or the junior officer won't understand how it can fit in, or the operational context, and be able to take that idea and run with it, right, and plug it in. Just with the wisdom that comes from experience, with the brilliance and creativity that comes with youth and creative thought. That's where great ideas come from. But this is a great example of that. It's how you're applying the tools. We often think of innovation as like a new thing, but sometimes it's just a new way to apply something you already have. Everyone tends to think of innovation and creativity as stuff. But if the mids understand the stuff we have, the drones and everything else, a lot of times innovation is creative, innovative ways of using the stuff you have.
Navy SEALs and some other special operations forces, one mission set that they conduct is boarding bigger vessels. Mm-hmm. So like taking a small boat, driving it up alongside a bigger boat, and putting up a ladder, climbing it.
Sounds hard.
Yeah, and
and dangerous.
Inherently, it's one of the most dangerous missions they do. And so initially, a lot of our background research came from just talking to operators.
We've asked the midshipmen to look at this problem set, and they don't really know what they're doing. It's kind of nice because they're giving it a fresh look that guys who have been in the teams who've been doing this for a bunch of years, we get comfortable and we do slight modifications to the way we do business. But to come in and kind of do a completely fresh look at how we're actually doing this problem set is kind of unique.
What we kind of learned is that it really was not the smartest approach trying to figure out like this new robotic system. So many things have been tried, there's like jetpacks that have been tried, all this like cool technology, but from what we've gathered through interviews is really they try out these new products, they don't really like them. So our approach was, instead of creating this brand new thing, we would essentially take technology that already exists in the civilian, like recreational climbing side of things, called ascenders. This here is our ascender attached to a lanyard that will be attached to my harness. This is going to sit on a static line that's anchored at the top. Ideally, once I'm attached, as I climb, it will follow me up. And then if I were to fall off, I'm gonna swing down, get a little stretch in here, and this is gonna lock on the rope and restrict my fall. We're about to run through our final test of our ascender.
What type of blade? Yeah, just be prepared. You're gonna make contact with the wall pretty good. So that was almost exclusively on me.
We saw some failures in the tests. I think the solution would be like having the rope anchored not from necessarily where the ladder is anchored, but almost like a hook directly adjacent to it. But with some minor adjustments, we were able to see the result that we wanted to see.
That was 0 me.
It did work.
When I think of innovation, sometimes we get in this idea of groupthink and echo chamber. And when we start looking at things in a different view, a lot of these younger folks who are, whether or not it's the Naval Academy, first joining the SEAL teams, they have a different background experience. So those folks coming in, bringing their ideas, taking another look at some of the things we've been doing for the last 20 years and saying, hey, guess what? Maybe we can do it a little bit different. To me, that's what innovation is.
It's such a great project because it's such a great example of this idea of innovation that, it might just be a thing that exists just used in a different way to solve a problem, just like a creative approach. It doesn't have to be a high-tech one always, but it's just different.
I mean, you want to try one more, get a little higher?
When we start talking about great power competition in that next fight, you have to be curious. You need to make assumptions, but then you also have to be curious about, all right, hey, if we do this, what are they going to do?
You want to try it again? Yeah.
And it's hard in the military. It's very much doctrine dictates a lot of the things that we do.
If that catches you, it's going to swing you into the wall that way pretty good, right?
And sometimes that kind of crushes that ability to be curious and to kind of work outside the box because, hey, we have regulations and whatnot that are there for good reason. But sometimes it kind of stifles the ability to be curious, be more innovative, especially at the truth level, the action level.
It's made me change my mindset from this is just a project, this is a senior capstone project that I need to get completed, to we are actually going to face serious problems in the future. And so this has kind of made me realize how to approach problems from a standpoint of just, here's what I have, here's my timeline, how can I get this done with the team that I have with me?
The whole apparatus of our capstone and independent research enterprise here, it's many people working together to make all of this work. But I wouldn't want to be in the business of approving every project because it would slow us down. We just can't go that slow. We got to move fast.
The pace of innovation today is not just rapid, it is relentless. In the great power competition with China, this isn't just a race for dominance, it's a race in which falling behind could carry grave consequences. And yet, amid the rush of progress, we would do well to pause, to remember the people behind the names above the doors on these buildings. But these aren't just mere buildings. They are the legacies of innovation and leadership that echo still today. Their lives shape the path we now walk. If you listen closely, you might just hear them. Their voices, steady and sure, reminding us that innovation without memory is motion without meaning.
I pray that no future war may ever again find us unprepared.
There's no way the leaders of tomorrow will be caught unprepared for the challenge that they'll face in great power competition, as long as they apply the mindset that we cultivate here at the Naval Academy to problem solving in that environment.
I think the saddest phrase I ever hear in a computer installation is that horrible one, but we've always done it that way.
There's a character trait that I think I have undervalued, that I've come to really appreciate maybe in the second half of my service years, and that is curiosity. The Socratic method works, and when you're always asking people why, and you're interested and genuinely trying to understand something, that process helps you see alternate pathways that your mind would have never envisioned. But it's tough if you don't even know what questions to ask.
You're looking for easy solutions. The trouble with you is you want easy answers, but you don't know the proper questions.
Very often it's like more than the solutions, right? We have to have the right questions to ask, right? So we have to arm the mids with those kind of questions, those kind of problems, so that when they go out and encounter a new technology, they'll know that could really help with this issue that we're struggling with. There's a quote that I like: too often we teach our children answers instead of questions.